As you can see on these pictures, orienteering is a great sport we all love, including orienteering sprint. But as you can see on these pictures, sometimes it turns into a fight, dangerous or even painful experience. It is maybe more interesting than for some masochist TV viewers, but is this the action we want from orienteering? Is it the way we want to present our sport? And is it something that our athletes really like? The answer for most of them is definitely no. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Wolf. I work as an SCA course setter and event organizer, and I'm a member of the sprint group by Food O Commission, where we are together with Helge, Janos, Fleming, Yori and Graham discussing many sprint specific topics, including the sprint safety. I led the sprint split session at high-level event seminar last February in Budapest, where we had a short group work about this. So let's summarize the outcomes and other experience from this year's competitions and check some possible ways and ideas how to handle this issue. So we as an SCAs can check that the organizers are handling this topic seriously and also advise them how to do it. These are sprints like 10-15 years ago. Also, these sprints had safety issues like traffic, pedestrians, dangerous places for sure, but were in general more easy, let's say more spacious or airy, I don't know the right word. But I mean, as the discipline develops, the athletes develop, they are better and better, and we as a course setters are forced to set more and more tricky courses. And it often means more narrow passages, stairs, fences, turnings, and it all brings more complexity, not only for the course itself, but as well for the safety. We have now mastered sprint races, sprint relay, knockout sprint, that are even more dangerous for all parties involved. And unfortunately, during last seasons, we saw some safety issues and incidents, crashes, races in crowded areas that we all, as an IOF, as orienteers, have to think if this is what we really want from orienteering sprint. I have received some complaints from athletes. During EOC last year in Italy, we really got to see how problematic and dangerous it can be when sprint races are held in crowded areas. Not only it impacts the fairness of the competition when runners lose time in the crowd, but it is extremely dangerous, and we are afraid that someone will get heavily injured if real measures are not taken in future events. This is a quotation from the letter written by Simona Ebersold and Kasper Fosser after the 2023 season. They then listed some potential solutions and ideas. We will come back to them later. Now let's do what we always should do when organizing an event. We have to identify all potential risks, plan how we will eliminate those risks identified, mitigate the risks that we cannot eliminate completely, and of course prepare for the risk handling. We have many various risks when organizing an orienteering competition, that's obvious, but let's stay at sprint safety topic today. At high-level event seminar last year, and from the latest experience, we have identified 4 main groups of risks regarding sprints: athletes' collisions in high speed, traffic, crowds in pedestrian areas, and other unexpected temporary events in competition area. Maybe we can find some others, but these were evaluated as the most important and common. And now I would like to go through these 4 topics and give you some hints how to eliminate those risks, or at least mitigate them as much as possible. Let's start with athletes' collisions. In general, it is very hard to fully eliminate this risk. It happens in athletics on track as well, but I still believe with a proper course setting and some other measures, we can almost eliminate or at least significantly mitigate this risk. I'll show you some examples we gathered, and then I'll try to propose some solution how to avoid it. Collisions in control circles. This is especially very important in mass start races. 2 examples. This one is from World Cup in Genoa, where ladies are passing the first non-forked control on the first leg of sprint relay, and this one is from first non-forked control at walk sprint relay. See the difference? In such races, it is extremely important to place the control in a way that runners continue. These controls should not be placed in dead ends, corners, eddy corner where two route choices meet. The route choices should meet sooner, and runners should pass around the control always in the same direction. Now, two examples from knockout sprint in Vicenza. Control in a place where runners have to turn back. The control should be placed to allow runners continue or offer at least more space for turning back. Similar story, again, control in dead end, where runners always have to turn around. Again, an example from the same chaos sprint, runners turning back just after they punched. I found similar example from sprint relay in Trescalipal, where most of the runners is turning, but at least they have way more space to avoid a collision. My hints for course setter in this case are: always avoid dead ends, place the controls on the right side of the streets and corners so runners can pass off, and try to create a space around such controls. Next case are the route choices in the opposite directions. We want legs with many route choices and variants, or at least left-right basic route choices, that's for sure. But when planning them, always have the safety somewhere in your mind. You all know the Fosser versus Hadron case from last year, and that course offered exactly those kind of route choices. Another example from the same competition, runners are splitting, taking different route choices, but then the groups run against each other and meet at the control point. In this case, the road is wide, but we are creating the oncoming traffic, and we don't want this. One of the possible solutions can be setting those basic route choices not perpendicularly to buildings, but diagonally, so the runners always meet and continue in the same direction. Of course, this depends on terrain a lot, but can be achieved if we have this in mind. Similar case are collisions on corners. Always very unpleasant to turn the corner in full speed where you can't see what's behind. One runner is running one direction and the runner in different direction. Generally, all these situations mentioned happen very often in sprints on all levels and are always dangerous. Nevertheless, course setters can most of these situations eliminate or at least mitigate by good planning and course setting. Of course, we want to have the best possible courses with many route choices, and sometimes it is hard to avoid the opposite directions, but we have to try. This is an example from Walk in Denmark made by Fleming, where they drawn all possible route choices and highlighted by red color all the sections where runners can meet in opposite. I think this is very useful. You can generate all the route choices by OCAT, the route planner analyzer, and then just compare and highlight. So it's not so time consuming, and definitely it's worth creating. By doing this, you identified all risky places, and now you can think if you can move the control slightly or change the curves in some way to eliminate those places completely. That is always better, and if it would harm the curve too much, you at least know the places to focus on, and you can try to think how to mitigate the collision risk here. I would focus mainly on turning in control circles, and I would try to place the control on the best possible spot from safety perspective, and I would focus on corners in identified areas. There we can place and organize warning runners, like we can see the example from Scotland.
Corner! Runner! Wrong! The best place to play the goal.
But I don't know if this is good to shout at runners, Maybe it is enough to place cones or fences or any other anti-cuts on corners. It won't prevent the collisions at all, but it gives the runners at least time to react. And the last part of this athletes collisions topic are collisions with something else, like piles, bulwarks, chains, door, or similar. We know all possible route choices. We should test them and identify all such objects that can be dangerous. Such objects have to be highlighted from safety reasons, as you can see some examples. Just a notice, always use tape of different color than forbidden areas and mention this in the bulletin. And one more note, pre-running improves safety. By pre-running, you can detect and improve some risky places in the very last moment. So definitely, pre-running is really important to do. Okay, let's move to second big risk I would like to talk about, and it's traffic. This is an example from EOC qualification race last year where athletes crossed the crossroad with traffic. No incident there, but it was a huge risk if a car came from south. And it's not just about cars. In Edinburgh, they had to manage the tramway crossing.
Tom, coming.
Of course, if possible, for high-level events, we have to eliminate the traffic in competition area completely. Close the streets for cars and trams, or simply use different terrain without traffic if not possible. In case this is not possible, we have to implement guarded road crossings and let athletes cross the road with traffic at guarded places only. This is an example from World Cup in Česká Lípa. Organizers succeeded in closing the whole city center except the ring road around, and because they wanted to use the castle in south and arena was far in north, the road with traffic was marked as out of bounds and there were dedicated guarded road crossings. It worked quite well. Only would be better to use more tapes along the streets to navigate at least to the crossing point like on Helge's picture. To mitigate this risk as much as possible, you definitely need a lot of marshals in the competition area, especially on places where athletes are crossing the streets, and they all should be well instructed what to do in case of some potential incident. Similar topic, but still different, is managing crowds in pedestrian areas. For TV, we only want pedestrians if they are interested in the race. If it is clear that they are annoyed or even hurt by passing athletes, it is bad for TV and for the sport. How can we have safe and fair sprints in touristic areas? At first, we should try to eliminate this risk. Back to Eberthold and Foster's letter. They wrote this as their first proposal. Don't choose crowded areas for sprint races. Most obvious solution. We understand that city centers are often chosen to get support from the region for television, etc., but we believe this should be avoided as much as possible. Not only is it a problem for the day of competition, but when runners prepare for crowded races, they also need to do a lot of trainings in crowded areas, making the risk even higher. The accidents before WOC 2022 can serve as an example. Of course, this starts already in the very beginning when planning the event and the bid. IOF should take this into consideration. Big cities usually offer higher funding, maybe are more attractive for TV viewers, but on the other hand, it brings crowds, traffic issues, and many other problems. I'll add my personal experience. We organized the World Cup in Prague back in 2018, and negotiations with the municipality were, let's say, not so warm as expected. Prague hosts many big events every year, every weekend, and was not so interested in some orienteering at that time. Also, the funding was not as expected. In the end, we ended up in parks. Not bad for orienteering, the competitions were great, but definitely you expect something else from World Cup in Prague. Next time for WOC And next World Cup, we chose smaller cities and towns, not as small villages, so they still have some funding possibilities, but significantly smaller than Prague. And all of them, like Mladá Boleslav, Doxy, or last year Česká Lípa, we were warmly welcomed. It was an honor for them to host world-class televised events, and was not a problem to partly close down for traffic and support us in other ways. Another good example can be using some compounds like university campus, amusement park, zoos, and so on, where we have no traffic at all, or at least very limited. I think WOC 2024 in sprint relay was a good example, but it is a more long-term solution, because next year we have WOC in Genoa, Italy, and Girona, all big cities where we will probably again more discuss how to mitigate those risks than eliminate. I think most of these proposals are valid both for traffic and pedestrians, so let's check them out. Again, what Eberthold and Foster propose. Make sure the curve avoids the worst areas. Super important that the curve planners do what they can to avoid the crowded areas when making curves, and where not possible, perhaps use special passages through the most touristic streets when crossing them. Making route choices where one road has a lot of pedestrians and the other doesn't should be definitely avoided. These examples I'm now showing are from Verona, special passages for runners and rather easy curves with no route choice, so all runners are using the same corridor that organizers can control. This helped organizers to manage crowds, but on the other hand, it totally killed the curves. Another example is how organizers were managing the crowds in Edinburgh. They put huge effort into this, but still it is sometimes fighting windmills, as you can see in pictures. For sure, to manage this you need to have enough organizers out in the curves. Again, back to Foster's Eberthold ladder. If a sprint is held in a crowded city center, this is a must. We would like to highlight the difference at WOC 2022 Denmark and EOC 23 Italy. At WOC, they did this perfectly with an organizer standing in most corners and every underpass to make sure no accidents happen. At EOC, they did not have enough organizers for an event in such a crowded area. Spectators and non-competing runners had to be asked to help, and still it was not nearly enough. It's for sure there has to be enough organizers out in the cars, especially in and out of the many narrow alleys and underpasses. They have to cover all risky places, and they need to know what to do if something happens. Organize the race in the most suitable daytime is another way how to mitigate the risk of crowds. It would let us to have the start in the morning, for example. WOC sprint final this year goes Friday afternoon, which seems like a very bad time with pedestrians in mind. A solution would be to have qualification in the day before and final Friday morning. It's another quotation from the Eberthold Foster's letter. Of course, this is often not organizer's decision, but IOF's mainly because of TV. But still, organizer and SCA have some power to change the schedule. You should know the competition area well and propose the best date time. Last proposal from the letter was put in bells on the runners. I remember seeing Morten Boström back in the days running sprint races with bells on his foot, making him quite easy to notice. If all runners had bells on their feet at WOC, I believe it would make pedestrians a lot more aware of the runners, especially after a couple of them have gone by. This would also help avoid crashes between runners like Casper and Joey at EOC last year. Well, I'm not very sure about this. It must be quite annoying from my opinion, but if the athletes are proposing it, maybe it is worth testing. However, I can imagine it can be a good solution for trainings, where we usually don't have marshals in the terrain, and trainings are often much more dangerous for all parties involved. Fourth topic we should briefly mention is managing other unexpected temporary events in the competition area. To the extent possible, it is important to identify all events like concerts, weddings, markets, parades, protests that may temporarily block pedestrian streets or road choices. Again, you should know the city, monitor regular events, ask the municipality, and avoid other big events. In case you know about some event that cannot be rescheduled, the courses have to avoid it. Some examples again from Italy. Sunday church mass. Local organizer knew how people walking out of the church will stay on the square in groups and discuss, walk to cafe, etc. So the entire square was best to consider out of bounds. Final map did not have to show this, but the route choices just did not make any sense through that square. The second example is a free market on the other square. But sometimes, even we do our best to avoid other events, something unexpected may happen. This video is from Riga, World Champs, where the unexpected wedding took place close to the arena. You can see the wedding guests and approaching runner. In such cases, you have to have instructed personnel that knows what to do and manage the situation immediately. At WOC we had so-called anti-conflict team. There were organizers dedicated to solve the conflicts or potential conflicts with local people if something happened. We were lucky, they did not have many work to do, but you have everything permitted, but at the race day, suddenly some grumpy person contends the control flag is on his land. Similar cases happen. It's quite normal. Usually a bottle of a good whiskey or rum solves this issue, but we need to be prepared and we need to have dedicated person for this. Until now, I paid attention to high-level events where you have 2 to 6 courses and around 2, maximum 300 runners, where fairness is the key aspect. The safety measures should be made in such a way that all athletes have the same runnability on the course and are thus never delayed by other traffic, as even a few seconds delay will in many cases have serious impact on the result, and thus mean an unacceptable breach of fairness. But what about lower level events? Small delays of athletes might be acceptable in this case, but also in lower level events we have to protect pedestrians and runners from being in accidents. And if this is so hard in high level event for 2 classes, how to do it at world ranking event for 1 or 2,000 participants? In the very end, I would like to show you an example from March. We organized Check-Out Tour series, including 2 world ranking sprints in one day in the amusement park close to Prague. We had, I think, 1,800 entered competitors and just 3 hours for one stage in the area consisting of many narrow passages, tunnels, multi-levels, labyrinths, etc. We spent a lot of time planning, and in the end we divided the classes into 5 groups. Each group had similar course concept. From each group, 2 runners started at the same time as maximum, so we had 200 runners in the competition area at the same time as maximum. We divided the competition area into smaller parts, and classes from each group used different parts of the area in both stages. And I have to say it worked quite well. Of course, you never eliminate the collision risk, but we really tried to mitigate it, and I am not aware about any serious issue. Many athletes said afterwards that they were afraid it will be a massacre and overcrowded, but in the end, it was okay. I just want to point out that by a good planning, you can achieve elimination or at least mitigation of many potential safety risks. And that's it. Do not forget to identify all potential safety risks, point out all opposite directions, dangerous corners, narrow passages, and try to eliminate them from the course completely. Detect all dangerous places on possible route choices like chains, boulevards, glass, door, or low branches, etc., and mitigate the collision risk by highlighting them. Always try to close the area for traffic or choose area where it's possible. secure road crossings with traffic, plan how to manage pedestrians, and have enough organizers for all these measures. And of course, even though you mitigated the risk as much as possible, still be ready for possible risk handling, just in case. I think if we have all these in mind when planning the event and creating the course, it is a first good step towards more safe orienteering competition. If you have other proven ideas for improvements, we would be really very happy if you share them with us in the discussion. Thanks for watching and wish you many great and safe sprint events.